Welcome to the Industrial Environmental Management Lecture Series on Business and the Environment. I'm Reed Lifset, Associate Director of the Industrial Environmental Management Program and Chair of the lecture series here at the Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Studies. Through this lecture series, started in 1991, we seek to bring corporate executives and others to Yale to talk about topics of current interest, and in many cases, cutting-edge developments in environmental management, policy, and technology. We value the additional perspective that business people bring to our discussions at the school and the opportunity to have students and faculty meet them and for them to meet us. In the past, we've explored such topics as the environmental impact of the service industries, how breakthrough technology has created new environmental markets, and green domestic markets in developing countries. The lecture series is supported by a small endowment, the Joel Amara Kurihara Fund. Joel attended the Environment School and the School of Management and graduated in 1992. He went to work for Conrail and was active in the Global Environmental Management Initiative. Joel was very bright, very committed, and a very energetic believer in the importance of greening corporate practice. When he died 17 years ago, Conrail, his colleagues, family, and friends established a memorial fund to honor him. His parents asked that the funds be used to support the series because they think it captures well his commitment to dialogue about business and the environment. This year, we're fortunate to have a special lecture series with additional support from Nestle Waters North America. The theme is Producers, Packaging, and Public Policy. The lecture series explores the topic of extended producer responsibility, EPR, and packaging. EPR is a policy strategy that makes producers responsible for their products when they become waste. The goal of the series this year is to explore the advantages and disadvantages of the application of EPR to packaging waste and municipal solid waste more generally in the US. Nestle Waters North America, the market leader in bottled water in the US, and a division of Nestle SA, the global food and beverage company, is seeking to significantly improve the recycling of beverage containers and all recyclable packaging materials. The lecture series has hosted 8 talks related to packaging and EPR, ranging from background topics, such as the role of plastic packaging in marine debris, and how or whether biodegradability might resolve some packaging waste problems, to topics more specific to EPR, such as the history of the use of this policy strategy in the US and the extensive Canadian experience with EPR. To bring this lecture series to a close, it seemed fitting to invite Kim Jeffery, the CEO of Nestle Waters North America, to talk. Mr. Jeffery and Nestle Waters have played a prominent role in advocating EPR for packaging in the US and in working to put it on the policy agenda. They've taken a very public stance in promoting EPR, and one that is somewhat at odds with some others in the beverage and packaging industries. Kim Jeffery has been president and CEO of Nestle Waters North America since 1992. He oversees the largest bottled water company in the US with 10 brands, including Perrier and Poland Springs. Over 9,000 employees, 27 plants, more than 100 facilities, and $4.2 billion in sales in 2010. Mr. Jeffery joined the company in 1978 as Central Division Sales Manager. Over the following years, he advanced to lead posts in sales, marketing, operations processing, to Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer before assuming the company's top position. Because of the success of Mr. Jeffery and Nestle in introducing EPR into many fora, we're not asking Mr. Jeffery to present an introductory lecture on this topic. Instead, we seek to take the discussion to the next level, EPR 2.0 as it were, by having a conversation, thus the title of this event. We'll start with some discussion between Mr. Jeffery and me for about 30 minutes, and then in the second half of the event, we'll open the floor to questions. The event is being recorded and will be available on the website of the school, along with the previous lectures. We'll send the web address to those who signed the guest list in front of the lecture hall if you want to view those recordings. Before we start our discussion, let me provide some background for those of you who are not familiar with EPR. Extended producer responsibility originated in the late 1980s when a Swedish academic coined the term, reflecting policy discussions that were taking place in Sweden and Germany. The notion behind EPR is that if producers were made responsible for the management of their products when they become waste, then producers will take into account waste-related issues when the products or packages are designed, making them more recyclable, for instance, thus making recycling or related activities less expensive, more feasible, and one hopes, accomplishing environmental goals. The intent is that the costs of waste management will be internalized in the price of products because the producers are bearing those costs. Products that are easy to recycle will be cheaper and thus will have a competitive advantage over those that do not. EPR was first adopted in a major way in the early 1990s when Germany enacted a widely discussed law, the Packaging Ordinance, and established a second or parallel waste management system for packaging funded by producers. Producers paid a fee to an industry consortium and were then permitted to print a green dot on their packages indicating to consumers that that package could be recycled through the new system. Thus, the costs were shifted from local governments to producers and consumers, and a new institution, the Green Dot Program, was born. This concept spread through Europe with the enactment of the European Union's Packaging Directive and on to East Asia, Canada, and to a lesser extent to the US and Latin America. With its diffusion, EPR took on different forms. In some countries, EPR for packaging does not involve a separate collection system. Instead, municipalities retain their traditional role of collecting recyclables along with trash, and producer organizations reimburse some or all of the costs. EPR has been conspicuously applied to waste electronics, automobiles, household hazardous waste, such as paint and batteries, and a variety of other products. In the US, legislation establishing EPR for municipal solid waste was attempted unsuccessfully at the federal level in the early 1990s. Since then, and until recently, EPR in the US has taken two forms: for use with specific household hazardous waste, such as rechargeable batteries, and bottle bills. Bottle bills are state laws that establish deposits on beverage containers. Typically, consumers pay a nickel when they purchase a beverage, which is refunded when they return the container for recycling. Bottle bills are controversial. Industry tends to oppose them because of the cost and administrative burdens they impose. Environmental advocacy organizations typically support them because of the high recycling rates for beverage containers that result. Those of you in the audience who are EPR aficionados will be itching to clarify and contest my simplistic overview. But rather than engage those nuances, I'd like to start the conversation with the person who has become one of the most prominent voices in this debate. With that quick summary, let's start the conversation about remaking recycling in the US, the potential for extended producer responsibility. So let's start with how did you first learn about EPR, and what was it about it that made you decide that it was something to support?
EPR for me came from, I was discussing with Marianne Chertow this morning, it was a process of sort of elimination. We've been on a sustainability journey in our company for a very long time, since we bought our first business actually. In 1980, we purchased Poland Spring Bottled Water Company, which was essentially a bankrupt company at that time, doing $3.5 million of revenue. And it came with 29 employees, a 50,000 square foot Butler production building that was almost falling down, and 450 acres of watershed land that basically protected the spring source. And so our sustainability journey began that year. If we didn't take care of the resource, we wouldn't have a business. And that extends today with 14,000 acres of watershed land. But as our journey has progressed from just taking care of our property to lightweighting our packaging to building 3.5 million square feet of LEED certified manufacturing space, we then move outside our four walls. And I set a goal of by 2018 of being responsible for a recycling rate of 60% for all beverage containers, not just ours. It's virtually unachievable. It's one of those big, hairy, audacious goals out there, but what it does do is focuses you on how do I get there? If you want to give an earnest effort to achieve that goal, how do I get there? Well, I first started casting around for a better bottle bill than the ones we have today in most states. We have 10 states with bottle bill legislation. In all but one, the return location is the retailer. And when the retailer is the take-back mechanism, you have no way of expanding it into more streams of material. California had a bottle bill that had recycling centers as the take-back mechanism. Those were outside of supermarkets, so theoretically you could expand those to other materials. But I started thinking, and Mary and I discussed this morning, I started thinking beyond our containers in the evolution of my thinking to all the streams of materials that we want to get back today and all the streams of material in the future that we want to get back that we don't even know about today. So a year and a half ago, I had sort of an aha moment when I went up to Toronto to look at their recycling system. They have a pay-as-you-throw system where you end up with a big bin for your, ideally, a big free bin for your recyclables and a small bin for your food waste. And 20 years ago, they started that system with collecting and processing 3 streams of material, and today it's 30 streams of material that they process and monetize. And so my evolutionary thinking came from just our packaging material to thinking about a system that could capture all streams of material. And if you're going to have a system like that, you've got to have the high-value materials in that system. A bale of bottles, used beverage bottles today, or household items or food items, sells for about 40 cents a pound. So a pound of recycled PET material is worth 40 cents today. That's a high-value material. If you have that in another stream, just to take back at the retailer as a bottle bill, you rob a larger system of the ability to have a high-value material carry a lot of the cost for an infrastructure that needs to happen. And I guess, Reed, that's how I got there to EPR. And I'll let you do the next one.
So of the systems that you've been looking at, could you say something about some of the features that, that seem like they might drive you to the goal you want to get to?
Yes. First of all, we need a system that's low cost. We need a system that's very broad. The lowest cost system is going to be a system that is paid for by suppliers by manufacturers like myself, who can run a private system that invests the money in the right places for collection, for processing, and provides an incentive for manufacturers to reduce their packaging material, use less of it. So whereas we have a bottle bill in Connecticut and New York that the retailers lobbied for a higher handling fee, I envision an EPR system that could ultimately be lower cost once the infrastructure is built, but managed privately so that the money goes into the right place. Today, a bottle bill in Connecticut, all the unredeemed deposits go into a black hole to fill a budget deficit. Not 1 cent of the unredeemed deposits in Connecticut go for recycling infrastructure in the state, and I think that's a big mistake. So it would be low cost. It would have everybody in it. 40% of what goes into landfills today, I think, Reed, is printed paper. Plastic of all kinds is about 6%. So we have a huge opportunity to get back many more streams of material and much more volume than just beverage containers with a system that has every supplier, every manufacturer in it. The other feature that's got to happen with a system like this is beverage containers are pervasive. We interact with them every single day. I see somebody out here having a bottle right in front of them and a sip out of it right now. So we interact with this packaging. There's a lot of it. It's very visible. And typical forms of curbside don't get to away from home recycling where a lot of this beverage is consumed. So the numbers are like this. In the United States, we have about 12% availability for away from home recycling. With 87% of the places where we consume beverages today not having a system of being able to get this material back and used again. So any EPR system has to have a very strong component for away-from-home recycling infrastructure.
So let's talk about away from home. What percentage of your bottles are consumed away from home?
I have no idea. But I'm guessing a lot. I would say it's somewhere between 50 and 60% probably.
And are there programs out there that strike you as being novel, or is there some that you would want to take as a model? Are there how is it that we're going to get beyond what we're doing now?
Well, we're building that today. We were part of a pilot program in Manitoba for an EPR program that we think is very close to what we'd like to see in the United States. The beverage companies in Manitoba are the first people in. There is a fee of 2 cents a bottle for every bottle purchased that the consumer product companies are charging out. It's being run privately, and it's 2 cents for the first couple of years because building out an away-from-home recycling infrastructure is very, very expensive. Think about the number of places you could have bins on this college campus where you need to have them, but you don't. It's just one place. And when you've got an 87% deficit or 88% deficit in away-from-home recycling, it's a very expensive cost. What we're doing in Manitoba is charging 2 cents a bottle until we build the system out, and at which point in time we think 1 cent is going to be all that's needed to enhance the rest of the infrastructure on pickup and processing. So and ultimately everybody who produces packaging material will be in the queue contributing to this system, although beverages first. So we like the way Manitoba is operating. We think there's tremendous good faith on the part of the beverage companies to be the first people in. We recognize that building out that part of the infrastructure is unique to beverage companies and needs to get paid for.
So have you come across any programs that are having the recovery rates away from home that you would like to achieve?
Well, this is a problem because we're building the system out in Manitoba right now. We think we're going to get rates up to 50 or 60% with away from home, a good curbside or single stream pickup, and obviously at the end of the day you got to have the right kind of processing because you want to use this material again. You can't have it contaminated. But we think we haven't built out the system yet. We don't have an early read on where we are, but we think we're going to get from 50 to 60%.
So you mentioned Toronto as an inspiration. Most of the Canadian provinces use the model where the municipalities collect and the producers reimburse them in some way. Mm-hmm. And Ontario, unlike Manitoba, has had a history of really acrimonious politics about that.
Well, we don't want to run a new system. We would like, and this is where you get into the devil's in the details on extended producer responsibility because there's lots of different ways to skin the cat here. We would like to be able to use infrastructures that are out there today, but these need to be augmented because what I was saying this morning, 15 years ago, this material didn't have the value that it's got today. Today, there's more demand for recycled plastic than there is availability, and that's one of the reasons why a pound of recycled PET costs so much money. So there is a lot of money in trash today, and you see more and more people getting into it. Private equity is entering it, as a matter of fact. When private equity is chasing around in this segment, you know something's about to happen for the future. So I think that our goal is not to restructure the systems that are out there, but they're to support them and grow them. If a state were to set the goal for us, then it's the job of industry to hit the goal, and you've got a pot of money to do it. So you've got to take care of the pickup, piece of it. You've got to take care of the processing part. I believe that we have to pick up 100% of the cost here, not to the extent where we're subsidizing people who are already profitable. Reed, you've got to take a closer look at the system in total, and this is where the devil is in the details. But basically, I envision a privatized system that picks up the burden of the cost and allocates the money into the right places. One of the things that's going to be critical is getting this material back in a form we can use it. If PET material is too contaminated, when we try to turn it back into a virgin resin, we end up with high acid aldehyde, benzene at parts per billion in excess of where you would want for a food-grade product. So the processing is a very, very important part of this extended producer responsibility.
So if you need high grade to produce the recycled content bottles that you want to make, and right now that only comes from bottle bill recovery.
No.
No?
No.
How much of your
we're buying PET for our brands from multiple places in the United States, and it's not all bottle bill.
What percentages?
I couldn't tell you what percentage is and isn't. But I can tell you that in California, where there is bottle bill, we're having trouble right now. We're going to, anybody from the West Coast, Arrowhead is our brand out in California. 50% of all the Arrowhead produced in California, all the Arrowhead produced in California is going to have 50% recycled content in it by the middle of this year. We have been partnering with a firm out there who's built a state-of-the-art recycling facility. Even with bottle bill material, they're having trouble right now getting to the level we need them to get to. If you're a soft drink company, you don't care so much about acid aldehyde and the other stuff that's in it, because you've got something with color, flavor, and sugar to mask the taste. But in a bottled water container, all you've got in it's the water. So you've got to be very, very careful with the grade of PET, and they're having trouble getting there, even at a bottle bill state. So there's a piece of this, Reed, that's processing. There's a piece of it that's contamination of the material coming in. You can take contaminated material. And when I say contaminated with other forms of plastic in there that will react improperly. And so some of it's in the sorting material in the plant up front, some of it's in the sorting material, sorting process at the recycling center. We discussed this morning. Some recycling centers in America are big warehouses with a front loader truck scooping the stuff into corners. And others are high-tech single-stream recycling facilities like we have in Hartford. So it's complicated, but it's not just one answer in terms of the incoming material.
So the vision is piggybacking on some of the existing infrastructure, getting more stuff by building out the system so there are more places that people can put their stuff. Where are the cost efficiencies going to come from if you're building on a system as it already operates?
Well, it's not so much cost efficiencies as it is availability of supply. This is an upside-down equation I'm going to give you. Recycled content resin today costs 15% more than virgin resin. And for those of you who've studied this, you would recognize that when you recycle just about any packaging material, you save a minimum 50% of the energy it takes to make virgin material. And all these materials, whether it's corrugated or plastic, they're all energy. So why is recycled content resin more expensive than virgin? And when are we going to have a viable market for alternative materials like this when it's 15% more than virgin? The answer is never. But the reason is that we get 30% of our containers back, and there's more demand than there is supply. We compete for recycled content with China on the West Coast. They're buying vast quantities of our recycled plastic to ship to China to make fiber. Because when cotton is expensive, the competitor for cotton that's cheaper is polyester. And when cotton is cheap, we have more available supply of polyester. But packaging for PET, polyester materials, is the lowest is a small user relative to the textile industry.
So you think that expanding the supply will basically drive down the price?
Basically, we can buy recycled corrugate for our packaging material today at prices cheaper than virgin resin or than virgin corrugate. The reason for that is that the largest recycled corrugate manufacturer in the United States has new technology and is able to produce light-weighted corrugate, which the legacy manufacturers of corrugate can't produce today. So if we can buy corrugate at prices the same as virgin, why can't we buy PET resin at the same price? There's more availability of paper and corrugate in the United States to meet the demand that's out there.
So how are you going to convince the grocery manufacturers?
Well, that's my biggest problem today. I'm probably the only consumer product company guy in America who would get up in front of you today and talk about this stuff the way I'm talking about it. And the grocery manufacturers, if the Grocery Manufacturers Association was run by the sustainability directors of the companies, we wouldn't have any problem. It's run by the government affairs guys. And therein lies the problem. Almost all of the consumer products companies in America have operations in Europe. They're operating under EPA laws in Europe, and yet they're opposing the ones, the EPR ideas that we're proposing in the United States. And they've been told that it's going to cost them $15 or $20 billion. I'm not sure that that's the cost, because if you want to be opposed to something, you can go to anybody who can give you an estimate that's in the neighborhood of what you want. If I was hiring a consulting firm and I was GMA, I'd hire the consulting firm that would give me the highest cost of EPR, and then I'd spread that out to you guys. The reality is that none of these manufacturers are thinking about the possibility of actually lowering their cost of raw materials by having a robust infrastructure to get this material back. We buy 400 million pounds of PET resin a year. We make all of our own packaging. We make 20 billion bottles a year in our manufacturing facilities, all lightweighted and all inside our plants, so we don't have to ship empty bottles into our plants. There are now about 4 major resin suppliers in the world, a couple of them Asian. There's been huge consolidation in the PET resin business because new capacities come on in Asia, high-tech, modern manufacturing techniques for resin, making the resin manufacturers in America who are working with legacy systems, who haven't invested capital to stay on top of their business, obsolete. So I envision a world where, with an oligopoly of 3 or 4 manufacturers making resin in the world, do you think I'm going to be able to negotiate a really good price with one of them, or are they going to be telling me what I'm going to be paying for resin in the future? I see a robust environment where we can use recycled content for our products as a way of disintermediating an oligopoly that's out there going to charge us a lot of money for our products. And none of the manufacturers are thinking to the end game where I could actually produce my products for less by having raw materials that cost less because they save 50 to 70% of the energy that it takes to make virgin materials.
So how are you going to get them to buy this?
Well, I'm going to be having to work on this for a long time, and I've been here 34 years. I'm not going to be spending too much more time as CEO of this company, but I'm going to continue to bang the drum on this issue. We have provided the seed money for an organization called Reinvented. There's a website. Is the website up, Michael? Okay, so you can go to the website and check out what we're doing. We're working with stakeholders, NGOs, and consumer product companies where they'll talk to us, and manufacturers of these materials where they will talk to us, to start to have a dialogue around what I call 21st century recycling infrastructure for our country. We're way behind the curve in the United States. We need to do something about it. There's no money in municipal government, state government, federal government. Of the $800 billion of stimulus 3 years ago, not one nickel went to recycling infrastructure in the United States. Frankly, if I could make a political announcement, we would rather invest $500 million in Solyndra and watch it go belly up instead of creating some real green jobs and carbon emissions reductions in something that's standing right in front of us every day. And this is going to take time. It's going to take us, we're talking to a half a dozen states that don't have bottle bills today about EPR legislation. We need one state to give us a model that we can look at to compare other forms of recycling and other systems of recycling against, so that we can start to have a more intelligent discussion about where we go for recycling in the 21st century in America.
So do you see the industry folks or the environmental NGOs as the biggest barrier in that way?
Environmental NGOs, you know, a lot of people still favor bottle bills. My view on that is they're narrow. They apply to one stream of materials when we need to get 20 streams of materials back, and we can't have 20 different systems. If we had the system, the kind of system I'm talking about right now, we don't need a separate e-waste system. One system can do everything. The example I used this morning, I was in Iceland last summer at a Bill McDonough thing, the guy that wrote Cradle to Cradle, and one of the guys on the trip was Jochen Zeitz, who's the CEO of Puma. We had a long discussion about him wanting to recycle his sneakers, but he's like me. He doesn't have any idea where those sneakers are going, and he doesn't know what happens to them after they're used. But I envision a system where you know, we could have sneaker week, and you know, you put out your sneakers and they get back to where they belong to get recycled. There's no reason why we can't do this, but we can't have 20 different systems. We need the one best solution for getting the most material back and the highest percentage of the most material back. And it's going to take a long time, Reed. I just think we just need one place to move forward on this so that we could have a stalking horse that the rest of society can look at.
I just want to say that I think we essentially have Sneaker Week at Yale through Nike.
That's good.
So let's turn to the audience and take some questions. Someone's got a microphone here to pass around.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up on that last point there, where you say that one of the biggest hurdles right now for successful EPR is the price, that the recycled content price was too high. And I was wondering if you could say or sort of guess or estimate an oil price where this may flip, that the primary cost would be so expensive that all of a sudden the recycled content would make sense.
It's not so much the oil price, because the feedstock for plastic resin is not just made up of oil, and essentially it's oil byproducts. The real issue here, if I go back to 2008, when the recession first hit, we could buy plastic or sell it for 15 cents a pound, and today it's 40. So what happened is demand went way low against the supply that was there, and the price came down. So it has less to do with the cost of oil and more to do with how much material we have available against the market that's out there for wanting to use it. And if we can, I know the rates of corrugate recycling are high, and paper, I don't know how high, but there's a hell of a lot of paper out there. So there's no question that if I can buy corrugate at virgin prices, I should be able to buy PET at virgin prices. And what I've done is just backed in to the notion that there's a lot less supply than there is demand for this material. And what I want to do is get the supply of the material up, because I believe if the supply of the material comes up, the price comes down, it creates a whole other industry.
I think John Wargall.
Yeah, Kim, thank you very much. And I was watching a brief clip this morning while making coffee on Good Morning America, and a pediatric endocrinologist was speaking about what he was calling one of the most toxic foods that we eat, which is sugar, in his viewpoint, and associated it with diabetes and obesity, hypertension, heart disease, and also used statistics that we were consuming up to several hundred pounds per person of sugar per year. And I wondered how you are dealing with that and how you are internalizing that and thinking about your product as an alternative to sugar that would be in a way healthier. I mean, I don't see it in your advertising, but I'm just kind of curious about why you would not engage that issue more directly.
Well, first of all, my first observation for you would be that if I was in the soft drink industry today, I wouldn't be very comfortable because they've really got a bullseye on their back on sugar. If you haven't seen it, if you haven't seen us talk about this in our advertising, you haven't seen a Nestle Pure Life commercial because we go right at it. Nestle Pure Life is now the largest selling brand of bottled water in the country, and most of the people that buy it are moms. They make the purchase decision for water about 70 or 80% of the time. And we've clearly hit a nerve with them on this. This morning I got a question about bottled water versus tap water. I'm agnostic about that. I believe people need to be drinking more water. It was fine for us for several thousand years before we discovered stuff with sugar in it. Here's the reality. I said this morning, when you talk about sugar, this is just not one industry now. Every man, woman, and child consumes 44 gallons per capita of carbonated beverages a year in America. We are the, I don't include Israel because it's such a small country, but America is the only developed country in the world where soft drink consumption is larger than bottled water consumption. The good news is soft drinks peaked at 55 gallons 10 years ago. 54 gallons. It's 44 today. During that time, bottled water went from 16 to 24 gallons per capita, which means we captured 80% of the consumption that soft drink industry lost. So when people talk to me about tap water versus bottled water, that's a false choice because our growth has all come from people not drinking sugar soft drinks anymore, wanting to be healthier. But the reality still exists that versus 40 years ago, we are consuming 450 calories a day from carbonated beverages, from sugar beverages, I should say, all sugar beverages, 450 calories a day, and 40 years ago it was 240. So we virtually doubled our intake of sugar beverages in the last 40 years in America. The Surgeon General 2 years ago told me that the life expectancy of Americans was going to decline 40 years from now because every third child born after the year 2000 is going to be diagnosed with diabetes sometime in their life. Now, I talk about, because we don't have sugar in our product, I talk a lot about this. I'm on the executive board of the American Beverage Association. It's like being a member of a club where they don't want you. But I'm past the age where I care.
What about Nestle Global?
Well, this is interesting. So I was up talking about moderation in beverage consumption a couple of years ago, and I got asked the ubiquitous question of, wait a minute, you work for Nestle, they sell lots of stuff with sugar in it. And we do. Nestle has a global portfolio of products that are indulgence products and health products. But on every package, we try to give people information about what they're ingesting and that there should be choice and moderation in the things that we do. And look, I got 4 kids. Do we have ice cream in the house? Hell yes. Do we have Coke in the house? Hell yes. Do we have Gatorade in the house? Hell yes. But I won't let my kids sit down at the counter and drink 12 ounces of soft drinks because I might just as well put the sugar bowl in front of them and say, here, have 10 teaspoons of sugar because that's what's in it. So it's not that we don't have those products, but my kids drink a lot more water than they do sugar beverages. And I just think that makes a lot of sense.
Next question. Please.
Hello? Okay. So my question relates back to what you were talking about getting your supply of reclaimed bottles up to the place where you could drive the price down. In Manitoba and in Canada, consumers are heavy-duty recyclers. It's part of their DNA. Their recycling rate is double what ours is at least. What are your thoughts around how dependent your success is on changing consumer behavior? And do you have any thoughts about how to do that?
It's a really good question because Michael and I were talking about this earlier. Most states don't have any money to educate around recycling where they have recycling programs because most recycling programs are starving as it is. The great thing about EPR is it's going to provide enough money to have robust education programs that have to go along with this. You know, I was saying this morning that we get 30% of our bottles back in the United States for all beverages. And the reason why we do, I discovered, I may be overly simplistic, but it holds together as far as I know because the information is not that great in this whole space. We have curbside recycling availability in what I consider a strong way in only, at most, 50% of the country. And the statistics are 50% of those people don't recycle often. 50% of 50% is 25%, then throw in 10 bottle states and you get to 30. That's the numbers for America. And I think it's, and Reed and I discussed this a while ago, it's not only educational, it's cultural. We've got demographics and psychographics where people just don't give a rat's ass about recycling. And we have to find a way to change that.
In Connecticut, there's a bottle bill and there's also recycling with the trash. I tried recycling down at the grocery store, and after about 2 years, I made $10, and I decided just as easy to put it in with the recycle bin. So once you have the kind of system you're envisioning, a separate bottle bill goes away, because now it's...
They should go away. But it's like somebody's blanket. It's like a little kid's Mikey, you know? They don't want to lose it because they don't know what it's going to be replaced with today. So we're actually trying to not do this in bottle bill states because I think they're going to end up being last. People worked a long time to get those done. But I totally agree with you. We don't take them back to the store. We got a single stream recycling now. What's interesting about the expansion where we put the deposit on bottled water 2 years ago, it took $1 million worth of material out of the curbside bins that the guys that were recycling used to support their curbside programs. Mm-hmm. So it's almost worked at cross purposes.
But let's be careful about that because the processors like CRRA in Connecticut lost the money, but the municipalities didn't have to collect as much.
Okay.
So
fair enough.
You have to be careful about
Okay.
who it is that's losing money. The municipalities are not necessarily losing money.
But here's where we are in Connecticut. Now after 2 years, we've got about a 45% redemption rate on bottled water. Well, I would think it would be higher, but I do what you do and maybe a lot of other people do. So maybe the effective rate, because we have pretty good recycling systems in Connecticut, pretty good availability of curbside in Connecticut, maybe the rates now in Connecticut 70 or 80.
One follow-up. When I put a recyclable bottle in with the trash, does somebody get back that 2 cents, or does, you know?
The 5 cents.
The 5 cents?
Well, here's what I'd say. It's not just that. Yes, there's a lot of fraud being perpetrated here, and the main amount of fraud is really in the handling fees because under the laws we have to pay the retailer in New York 3 cents a case and 2.5 cents or a bottle, 3 cents a bottle in New York, 2.5 cents a bottle in Connecticut, to take it from the front of the store to the back of the store. And we have people, we found an operation that was actually, we have we have a little stripe up on top of our labels that show non-deposit. And we found an operation where they had human beings razoring off the red on the top of it to get the 3 cents. It went from being Italian mafia to Russian mafia. But yes, there's a tremendous amount of fraud out there with these container laws, and we have a big problem. We have a 125% redemption rate in Maine. That doesn't work very well in the long term. Yeah, so I think look. I could stand up here and tell you all the reasons why I don't like bottle bills, but that sounds self-serving. What I'm advocating for is a larger system that gets more material back.
I haven't heard you mention the term reverse logistics at all in your talk, and I'm trying to get a handle from what you said on how important you think that is for getting a good recycling system right, so that you don't have the problem whereby people are making special trips and therefore largely negating any benefit that you get from recycling to take the things to an appropriate recycling center.
Well, I did address it from the standpoint of there are people who think that we should have a system for bottles and a system for other stuff and a system for this and a system for that. 15 systems ultimately will get at this logistics issue in a very negative way. My carter, who's a private carter in the town where I live, makes a once-a-week separate trip to get my recyclables at my house. But I'm advocating EPR because I think it's the most efficient way to get the most material back. One trip versus a bunch of trips. I don't know if I'm answering your question properly or not, but yes, I think you know, in the class this morning, the professor said at the end, I think we should go for, we should have two models. What's the ideal system, and then what's the most pragmatic system? And it may be ideal to have 15 different EPR systems out there, but from a pragmatic standpoint, we need the least cost, most efficient system that gets the most amount of material back. Did I get there?
Nestle is a company that has creating shared value at the core of its principles, and it's one of the main proponents of creating shared value. And within that, it has nutrition, water, and rural development as the three dimensions that it wants to approach. What is Nestle doing globally for water, and how is it creating? How does it tie it up with creating shared value?
Well, water happens to be the single issue that the chairman of the company is focused on, Peter Brabeck, and he chairs the United Nations group on water sustainability and water management globally. I said this morning that we're going to run out of water before we run out of oil in this world. And because our population is going to double 40 years from now, we do not manage our water resources properly today. If we manage water the way we're managing it today, we will not be able to feed the people that live on this planet 40 years from now. So the biggest looming issue in our chairman's mind, beyond anything else, is water resource management. He thinks it's a bigger issue than carbon. It's a bigger issue than oil usage. And if you don't have to look very far to see how we subsidize water in America today. We charge less for it in municipalities than it costs to maintain the infrastructure. We pay farmers to grow crops that are not water efficient. We grow rice in the desert in California so people can keep their water rights, use it or lose it out in California. And we're depleting major aquifers in this country because we're not sustainably using the water supplies that we have today. So we are very vocal advocates for water sustainability, and part of our rural development is to teach people to irrigate crops more efficiently, to use less water, to grow more on the land that they're irrigating. Did I get there? Okay.
Yeah, let's do one more question.
First of all, I've heard you a couple times speak, and I always appreciate the transparency and the and the directness. So I have a different sort of piggybacking on what Heather asked in terms of the community culture behavioral shift and your effort now with reinventing recycling. where do you see either the biggest blockades or challenges in getting that level of collaboration happening on the corporate culture shift? And if you wanted to offer, who do you see as your strongest allies in that? And are there, folks that we should know about who may be oppositional to those efforts?
I think Coca-Cola is relatively close to our thinking on EPR. Most of the rest of the consumer products companies are not. My belief is that through our efforts, we will create enough dialogue around this issue and enough ancillary support from interested NGOs like As You Sow, NRDC, etc., that ultimately to oppose something that makes sense is going to look stupid, and it's not going to reflect well on these companies. Part of the responsibility of CEOs like myself is to look at the future, see what's coming, and get on board so that you end up being in the right place. When I joined the American Beverage Association, I've joined twice now. I quit the first time because all these guys did was fight bottle bills. They didn't offer any other solutions. I said, if you look shrill if all you do is oppose and don't offer another solution. And that's how I see GMA today, frankly. They're opposed to it with no other solutions. Frankly, in my view, they're hiding out right now. You can't find any of those companies that's making a serious effort at improving recycling in America. The beverage industry is the only place now that's starting to see the light on this issue. But it goes way beyond the beverage industry. Every single one of us uses corrugate. Every single one of us has printed paper of some kind. And we can use this material again, but we have to get it back. The thing about plastic, the thing about paper, we can use it over and over and over again. It's got an infinite life cycle if we just get it back and use it again. And I just think to stay on the other side of this issue is not going to reflect well at some point in time in the future. We have to move the needle on recycling in America. Who's going to stand up and be part of the solution, and who's going to stand there and be obstructionist about it?
Well, on that note, I'd really like to thank Kim Jeffery for coming here and talking to us.